Happy Valentine's Day. Almost. Love and blood is in the air on today's episode. So, if you are new to the podcast, I am one of your hosts, Stephen the Indian, alongside with Will the Cowboy. We are a cowboy and Indian that talks ghosts, conspiracy theories, cryptids, mysteries, ghost stories, all alike. So, if you are interested in any of that stuff, grab your blanket, grab your s'mores, gather around the campfire because we are beyond the campfire. So you can follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And yeah, we hope that you will connect with us there. Will, Valentine's Day's tomorrow.
Yeah.
You got any special plans with your lady?
We're just going to go out to eat. We were going to go see a movie, but the movie theater is dumb and they only got one showing and it's at like 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, what? Okay.
Mm.
Dude,
Yeah, it was actually.
I really should have made a reservation for a good restaurant 2 weeks ago, but I was trying to put in one yesterday. Or I guess
Yeah.
recording. So it took me a while to find something, but
I feel like Atlanta's pretty packed, at
no,
least
for
for
sure.
Valentine's Day. It's like
Too many people here, man. So
everybody just needs to get out. Yeah.
But
So
today's episode, not so much talking about love, but talking about a little something else. So what you got for us?
a little gang banging, you know.
That's one way to put
Yeah.
it.
So, hey, you know what? Technically, blood does fit into Valentine's Day because, the heart pumps blood.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's a stretch. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of a little slice of mystery. There's like a little hint of mystery with this one, which we won't really go too much into because today we're mostly going to be focusing on the haunting. If you wanted more of a mystery, well, you know what? Find us somebody to make a true crime podcast underneath us, and you can hear the more crime statistical stuff. But today we are traveling to Chicago, the Windy City, where the true gangbangers were.
Oh yeah, there's
You see here, Sonny.
Some people call it Chirac. Just a lot of crazy violence happening over there. But anyway,
Where back in the day, Sonny, the white people were the ones doing the violence.
That's true. That's true.
Hey,
Yeah.
can I say that? Is that going to get us canceled?
Hey man, white people are making a comeback. So
Hey,
I'm on Twitter too much. Ignore that. So go ahead.
anyways, yeah. So we're traveling to Chicago. So hop in our 1920s car. Get your Tommy gun. We got some gang banging it. We got some illegal moonshining to do. Yeah. So we're traveling to Chicago, Illinois, and in order to establish our story though, we're gonna hop in a little time machine here. Beep boop boop. We're gonna go 88 miles an hour so we can jump back to 1929. Okay. So again, like I said, this is sort of a mystery because not all details are clear, but we do know what caused the haunting. Stephen, what was going on in 1929?
1929, at the end of the Roaring Twenties, you had Prohibition, it was still in effect at that point, right? Or
Yeah.
is that?
No, it was still in effect. You had your mobsters going. Wait, when did Prohibition end?
Well, anyway,
You talk. I'll look up.
Yeah, you had your mobsters, many of Italian descent. You had Prohibition going on, so people weren't drinking out in the open. You had to go to a secret speakeasy or things like that. And yeah, the Roaring Twenties. It was quite the time, and alcohol was being shipped around however you could get it to be shipped. And yeah, so is that kind of what you wanted me to say?
Yeah, which by the way, I looked it up. I did not realize how long the Prohibition went on for. It went on for 13 years.
Yeah.
It started January 17th.
I'm still surprised it ever did pass, considering what a big drinking culture the U.S. was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it went from January 17th, 1920 to December 5th, 1933.
Okay, so 1929, it was still in full effect.
Yep, we were in the heat of the moment. It was the heat of the moment. Anyways, so all right, so there was this gang. They were known as the North Side Gang, and they were in their garage with their knowledge, You know that meme, right? Here with my Lamborghini knowledge.
There you go.
So there were 7 men. We had Albert Kachalek, whose alias was James Clark. He was second in command and brother-in-law to head of the gang, George Bugs Moran. You had Adam Hayer. He was the bookkeeper and business manager. You had Albert Wainshank. He managed several cleaning and dyeing operations for Moran. You had the gang enforcers, Frank Gusenberg and his brother Peter. And there's 2 civilians as well, Reinhardt H. and Schwimmer, a former optician turned gambler. And there's also John May, an occasional mechanic at the garage who brought his dog Highball. So these 7 men, they're hanging out in their garage. They're having a grand old time working on cars, manly stuff. Might be drinking some illegal beer, throwing the ball around with Highball. Well, as they were waiting for a truck with liquor, and for Moran and Willie Marks and Ted Newberry. So they had this liquor truck coming in for these guys. So they weren't just, they're hanging out in the garage, their Lamborghini. They're waiting on the truck to come in to bring more liquor. So around 10:30 to 10:35 in the morning, there was a black Cadillac that pulled up with a driver and a front seat passenger, and they were wearing police uniforms. Okay. There was 3 men in the back who were wearing civilian clothes. Okay. Now, apparently Moran drove past thinking it was a cop car conducting a raid. So Moran was going to the garage, passed by the car, and just thought it was police guys who were just fixing to go to a raid. Okay. The policemen came into the garage, and they had all 7 men line up against the wall. And as the men turned, put their hands up against the wall, right? The cops were behind them, obviously. The 2 men dressed like cops, and the 3 civilian men, obviously dressed like civilians, pulled out Tommy guns. And they opened fired.
Here we go.
And they opened fired. And there's apparently also a shotgun. So 70 rounds from the Tommy gun went off. 70 rounds right into these guys, 7 guys. And there's also 1 cartridge from the shotgun. Out of the 7, 6 died instantly. However, Frank Gusenberg, he lived, but of course he died. But before he died, he refused to identify his shooters. So the shooters left the scene as though officers were escorting / arresting the plainclothes men. So the plan was they're going to go in here. They're going to kill these guys. Prohibition, who knows what's been going on, right? Rival gangs and stuff. And they killed the men. And then in order to make it look somewhat normal, the 2 guys pretending to be cops escorted the 3 civilians to make it look like an arrest had happened to get away with it. The only reason why people realized what had happened was because the dog wasn't killed. So that's a win for PETA. But Highball started barking, and the neighbors were like, "What's going on? Hey, police." So yeah, if you're not too sure what we've just mentioned, that is right. For Valentine's Day, we're talking about the Valentine's Day Massacre. Any questions so far?
Yeah, no, I can only imagine being the police officers that came in and found that bloody mess. But yeah, it was shocking. It was bloody. It was on an interesting day. They could have done it presumably any day, but yeah, they did it on Valentine's Day. So, yeah, no questions so far. I guess as we kind of get more into it, I'll kind of ask. But yeah, man, what a time to do it.
I know, right? Like, come on. So, according to Wikipedia, Moran heard about the murders. He checked into a San Francisco hospital in Evanston, Illinois, for 4 days under an alias, claiming that he had the flu. He sent a message to John Egan, the head of detectives at Chicago Police Department, that he did not know who was responsible for the killings. And this is what he wrote. "We don't know what brought it on. We're facing an enemy in the dark. A reporter tracked him down at the hospital. We don't know what brought it on. We're facing an enemy in the dark. A reporter tracked him down at the hospital where Moran told him that only Capone kills like that. So, pretty famous name right there, right? You know, Al
The
Capone himself.
big mob boss himself, possibly the
Mr. Syphilis.
I know possibly the most
Was it
famous
syphilis?
gangster.
Yeah, syphilis. Yeah, did you know he had syphilis?
Is that how he died?
I think so, yeah. He had complications. Did you know, like, it made him go crazy? Maybe that's why he was the
Oh,
way he was.
it's kind of
Yeah,
funny
syphilis.
how he got caught because they didn't catch him for most of his gang affiliated stuff. They got him
No,
for was it tax evasion?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So
What's interesting, guys, is this will not be the first time we mention Capone. There's another future episode where we've got a haunted place where Capone is also said to have been. Uh, anyways, so on March 12th, a federal grand jury was convened to hear evidence about bootlegging in the city, and Capone was subpoenaed, but claimed he was sick and got a note from a doctor in Miami that said he'd been suffering from bronchopneumonia since January. The note also said that it would be dangerous for him to leave the mild climate of southern Florida and go to the city of Chicago. However, the FBI didn't buy it and got proof that he was in the area. So they're trying to figure out who did this. Okay, so the leader of the Northside gang, he was in a hospital, and this detective tracked him down, and he was like, "Listen, the only person," and they're like, "Who do you think killed your gang members?" And he's like, "The only person who kills like this is Al Capone." And Capone, and so they were like, "All right, we got all this stuff about bootlegging going on. We got to subpoena Capone." And Capone's like, I wasn't there, man. I got a doctor's note." And the FBI's like, "That's
doctors,
crap."
right?
FBI's like, "That's crap." And the FBI got proof that he was in the area. The police, the Illinois Attorney General's office, and the coroner's office all opened investigations into the murders, relatively independent from each other. So it's a little interesting because usually, like, the coroner works alongside the cops or whatever, but they're all kind of working different. They're working the case from different angles. Forensics proved Chicago police guns were not responsible. Duh. I mean, the guys were not actually cops; they were fake cops. Northsiders were rivals of Al Capone's gang, the Chicago outfit, and rumors speculated he was behind the murder. So not only do we have the guy who leads the gang saying Al Capone kills like this, but we also have evidence and proof that the Northside gang was kind of scuffing it up with Al Capone's gang and was trying to see who was the big bad wolf and who was bigger and badder. And that's why a lot of people were like, well, this guy said that he could have killed them, and we know they didn't like each other, so they probably killed them. So any questions?
Yeah. So they dressed up as cops. They committed this awful, murder, and you did say that this was gang activity, right? It was like gang
Yeah.
versus. Okay, gotcha.
That's what they were suspecting at the time. Is we had this knowledge that we knew Al Capone's gang did not like the Northside gang, and I'm actually fixing to get into some of the reasons why. But they had been scuffing since the 20s, like since the 1920. So they've been going at this for like 9 years. And now this was not like, because Al Capone didn't have a gang in Chicago. He had like a Chicago outfit of his gang, because I think his gang was pretty much spread out across America. Because again, we know he was the big bad wolf. So there was scuffing between the Chicago outfit and the Northside gang. And so this has been going on since the mid 1920s. We know this because the first incident that probably started the feud a little bit was in 1925. Jaime West and George Bugs Moran and another Northside gang member ambushed and shot Johnny Torrio, who was the head of the Chicago outfit at the time. So you've got some people that were in the garage and another member who ambushed a guy and killed him, and is like, "Hey, this is my gang. You don't do that." They thought Toro was dead, but he apparently survived and gave up the gang to Al Capone and then that guy moved to New York. Um, Apparently, Jaime West, who was then at the time head of the Northsiders, he apparently shot at Al Capone's car, completely missing Capone but wounding the driver. Yeah, so they were not very nice to each other. There's also speculated that George Bugs Moran, the head of the Northside, was the target, although he was not present at the time of the murder. So there are seven people went in the building. The leader of the Northside gang, remember how I told you he drove past the cop car? So because he thought it was a raid happening, he didn't stop to go in. He just kept driving. And that's why he survived the shooting. Otherwise, he would have died as well.
Ah, I see. Okay. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
So apparently, though, even though they were bad, like enemies to each other, the Northside Gang and the Chicago outfit did do some business together. Capone sold whiskey to Morin speakeasies. Morin then found cheaper whiskey, and then he cut ties with Capone. But customers didn't like the cheaper stuff, so Moran tried to go back to Al Capone, but Al Capone said no, and then Morin would raid Al Capone's connection for the original whiskey. So again, like these guys, like it's normal gang activity, like the normal type of stuff, right? So you've got these guys been going at it. Like you've got the Northside Gang has shot one of Al Capone's men. There's you had Jaime West who shot at Al Capone's car. Al Capone luckily didn't get hit, but his driver did. And then you've got even this where it's like they were business buddies, but then one of the guys was like, hey, you're too expensive. I don't want it. Get out of here. No. And he cut ties. He's like, I'm not. But then when his customer's like, we don't like this cheap stuff, he's like, all right, I'll go back and try to talk to Capone. And Capone's like, dude, no. And he's like, okay, bet. I'll go raid your warehouse. So, police arrested many, but there was lack of evidence. So lack of charges stuck for the murders. Because they were like, okay, obviously Al Capone's guys did it, and we think it's these guys, but there's no evidence. Like they couldn't prove it was them, so they got let free. Now in 1935, so this happened in 29, so that would have been 6 years later. Brian Bolton admitted to being the lookout for the rival gang, for Al Capone's gang. So he was to be on the lookout during this whole operation when they go in and kill these guys. And he had named Fred Goetz, Gus Winkler, Fred Burke, Ray Nugent, and Bob Carey as the murderers. So it took about 6 years for us to finally figure out who might have been behind it, because this guy come forward. He's like, I was the lookout. It was them, right? Now, this was, of course, supported by memoirs of Winkler's widow, Georgette. However, not everyone was content with answers given. Some believe Three Finger Jack White and Tony Accardo were involved, but again, they were not named. So, any thoughts or questions before I finish up with the history?
I think sometimes we look at the most violent aspects of history because the 1920s USA, not that it was the safest place in the world, but roaring 20s, yes, alcohol was banned, but most people could kind of get it if they really wanted it. And you have this shocking murder that happens, and I think whenever something violent like this happens, people kind of realize violence is always crouching at the corner. There's always things going on behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
usually it stays hidden, but sometimes it crops to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these murders are just an example of that. But yeah, not really a question. Excuse me, but more like a comment. So
yeah. So again, though, nothing was really done after that. So really, I don't think any arrests were ever truly made. So we really don't know if Al Capone was truly behind it, or if it might have been another gang or what. But a lot of people speculate Al Capone's men. Yeah, this guy was a lookout. He was looking out from a hotel across the street. And he's like, it was these guys, but nothing was ever found out about that. So that's where when I said there's a hint of mystery, it's either way, 5 men went into this building and killed 7 guys. And they didn't just, it wasn't like a shootout. It was like a murder. Like straight up, there was no defending themselves. They just got lined up and shot. But again, we speculate that Al Capone is behind it, but we don't really know who's truly behind it. If you want more information about a deeper dive into the history of this, definitely like, comment, subscribe, and maybe we'll find somebody that, because we are still Beyond the Media, that wants to do a podcast underneath us. So maybe they want to do a crime podcast. There we go. Also, by the way, my notes were done by our editor, Haley. She writes in here, fun fact, this massacre helped lead the introduction of the National Firearms Act of 1934. So, little interesting tidbit there. That Firearm Act, by the way, was enacted at June 26, 1934, and it was the first federal regulation of firearm manufacturing and transfer designed to curb gangster-era violence, and introduced a $200 tax and registration for specific weapons like machine guns, short-barrel rifles, shotguns, and silencers. So, if you guys want to know the reason why we cannot have fully automatic firearms, blame Al Capone.
There you go.
Now, the last little bit of information I have about this is, according to Jonathan Eeg, Capone's biographer, he stated this crime stirred people in a way they had seldom been stirred before. From coast to coast, people seemed to suddenly be reaching the conclusion that a line had been crossed, that the violence had become too much to bear. The experiment known as Prohibition had blown up once and for all. So,
did you ever read the book Al Capone Does My Shirts?
No.
Okay, yeah, that was a book I read, I think, in middle school. But, like, it's about this boy that lives in Alcatraz. And they get, like, the criminals to do things like their laundry and things like that. But I think, like, Al Capone, like, does his laundry, basically. It's kind of a funny story. But, yeah, this whole episode's just been making me think about that series.
And don't worry, guys, we will be talking about Alcatraz at some point. Which that's not. Remember earlier I said there's that haunting involving Al Capone. That is not from Alcatraz. That's a different prison we'll be talking about. So now I'm going to get into a couple of the short hauntings that have been going on in this location. First off, sadly, guys, if me and Steve wanted to investigate this place, we can no longer do that because the garage was torn down. It was torn down in 1967. But yeah,
we're born way too late.
I know. The interesting thing, though, is so the bricks from the garage wall where the guys were lined up that has the bullet holes still in it, it was purchased by a Canadian businessman, and he displayed it. Sorry, my bad. There's a Canadian businessman, and he purchased the bricks because he had this weird fascination with it.
Sure.
So he, of course, he didn't get the, like, they took the wall apart brick by brick, and he took it to, his restaurant. And so apparently people claimed at his restaurant in Canada that whenever they were near the wall, they would feel negative energy and just would get eerie feelings from it, and it just felt wrong. So there's a lot of history. I didn't want to say a lot, but eventually the guy kind of wanted to try to sell the wall, and it failed a lot. Like a lot of people were not wanting to buy it, But there's like one brick I think is in the Crime Museum in Washington D.C. But there's the whole wall, like a whole section of the wall, that is on display in Las Vegas. If it still has residual energy and that haunting feeling, maybe we'll go find out.
There you go.
So, but like I said, the building was torn down in 1967. But people who visit the area still, because it's a little park now, they claim to have a feeling of dread some claim that there is sightings of apparitions. And for decades, visitors to the area have also, including residents who live nearby, they report hearing screams, arguings, and then the sudden sound of gunfire in the early morning hours, particularly around February 14th.
Hey, couple more days.
I
Or
know.
at the time of this recording, but
At the time of this recording is tomorrow,
yeah.
but yeah, so maybe we'll go there one day and we can hear some stuff. So yeah, so not a lot, just a lot of history. There is, like I said, a couple reported, and like I said, there's no building there today. Now Al Capone is haunting, but he's not haunting at this location. He's actually at the Congress Plaza Hotel in Chicago, which was where his headquarters were. But the reason why he's obviously not at the specific sites because he was in Florida, according to his doctor's note. So yeah, any thoughts, questions, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think the date of it, the character involved, right? You know, Al Capone, the most famous gangster of the 20th century, possibly most famous gangster ever. And here you go, you know, right? Like you have this shocking murder, you have him behind it pulling the strings, and yeah, just a classic tale in history. You have a little bit of that supernatural element in the background, and yeah, I mean, overall, just a tragedy, but definitely a fascinating part of the 1920s and that era. So
Yeah, and I think it really is. I think, like, you know, like Haley put in the notes and like we heard, I think it really did lead to a turning point in a lot of things. I think a lot of American history can be kind of pointed back to Al Capone's shooting, and whether or not he did it, because again, we don't really know. We have speculations more it was him. But like I said, like a lot has come out of that. You know, obviously, like there's the first Firearm Act to make it to where you had to pay $200 tax, plus you had to get special registration or to get automatic weapons. Um, you know, and like his memoir, the guy who wrote his biography, like said, is this probably is what started making people realize that the prohibition was a failure of an experiment. You know, we get rid of alcohol, will it fix our problems? And clearly not. As for the hauntings, guys, I think there could be something there. You know, they say people see figures moving, they hear the machine gun fire. And, you know, Stephen and I explained on this podcast before, like, at least my view of ghosts, where I believe, you know, whenever you're walking on the beach, you know, you leave footprints behind. And so I think with how dark of history that is, and, you know, the darkness that it left behind, I think it's left a rip in time to where we can witness what has happened. And that's where we hear the gunfire, we hear the screams, we hear the arguing, we hear everything. You know, we still see things happening, even though they're probably still not there. But yeah. Anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's all I got, brother. So yeah, interesting times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're almost in about 3 years. This event will have happened 100 years ago. Kind of crazy to think about. So
well, you know what, guys? Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, because maybe Steven and I can go there for the 100th anniversary. Because there's
really exciting.
So. There's another place I want to visit for their 100th anniversary that's coming up in about 6 years.
Oh yeah,
it's the roadside where Bonnie and Clyde were killed.
Oh, that's right. You've seen Highwaymen, right?
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, that is one of my all-time favorite movies. So well done. Yeah. All right. Cool. I think that'll about do it.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you guys again for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond Campfire. And just remember, on Valentine's Day, some ghosts don't bring roses.